but he literally told me that the banks in Canada operate like the cartel that are controlled by the government. Like literally,
that's a great way of putting it.
That's literally.
Yeah. Explain that.
I'm not gonna. I don't want to butcher it because this isn't. It's above my head. But he basically said the government dictates what the banks do and the banks follow. Yeah.
Maybe.
You know what's crazy? I had a conversation. I put this up on Twitter the other day. I had a conversation with a pretty a pretty high level executive economist from one of the bigger banks. I don't want to name the banks or whatever, but because I work with this guy and or I talk to him a lot. I don't want him to not discuss things with me. But he literally told me that the banks in Canada operate like the cartel that are controlled by the government. Like literally,
that's a great way of putting it.
That's literally.
Yeah. Explain that.
I'm not gonna. I don't want to butcher it because this isn't. It's above my head. But he basically said the government dictates what the banks do and the banks follow, and that's it.
And this is what people need to understand: the banks and the government are essentially one.
Yeah.
People think the banks are like, oh, the banks are going to fail. They're going to go blah blah blah. You think the government and the banks aren't?
Yeah.
They're the government wants an oligopoly. It's so much more power, right?
Yeah.
When you have how many banks are in the U.S.? Hundreds and hundreds.
Yeah.
You have no control over those
thousands.
regional banks. Yeah, thousands probably. You can't control the little regional bank in Florida, like as well as you can control the.
Something else that he mentioned that was really interesting too is as an economist. So he said that. So his job is to put together forecasts for the bank, and he said, don't quote me here, but I put basically the quote on Twitter, but he basically said, if you think that you're able to predict anything, you're a fucking fool. And he said if he's learned anything over the last few years is that the market is completely unpredictable. It is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's so...
He's like, we could put our forecasts out there, but the only thing that our forecasts are based off of is the information that we have at hand, basically, and we're taking a shot in the dark with our best educated guess. And he said he does base it, off of historical, factual evidence of what's happened in the past. But the problem, what he said is, a lot of times when like, especially now, is these times are simply unprecedented. So how do you actually base things off of historical, factual evidence when this type of scenario has never really happened before? Yeah, and then he also mentioned that the problem nowadays is that you get these black swan events thrown into the mix, and it makes it completely unpredictable just when you think you have a grasp on things.
Yeah, so like people are looking back to previous times when it wasn't a global economy, number one. We didn't have the internet, for instance. We didn't have COVID or ultra low rates. Like,
I'm going to interrupt you for real quick. But look at this. Look at this, for example. You just mentioned the internet, right? I'm pretty sure, again, don't quote me or whatever, but I'm pretty sure the whole sell-off for SVB was because of the whole, it going viral on Twitter and other
good point,
and other social media outlets. I don't know exactly, but that's what I did. I saw a couple articles saying that like Twitter had a big hand in SVB actually going under. And we touched on that too. The economist that I was speaking with, he actually mentioned that he touched on it. He's like, yeah, were they mismanaged? Yes. Were they in trouble? Yes. But if it wasn't for that, would they have failed? He said probably not.
That's a good point.
Right? You're feeding this snowball, and it's rolling down the hill so fast, getting so big, it just ends up becoming unstoppable. Yeah. And that doesn't happen without the internet.
Yeah. And to summarize, people were pulling their money out of SVP because they were reading stories on Twitter and whatever else, and they got scared and started pulling their money out too quickly for the bank to deal with it. Exactly. Right? And if it wasn't for the internet, it probably wouldn't have happened, and they would have been able to digest the
now I know people are going to probably fact check this kind of shit, and
I mean, there's that's part of the story. That's a significant part of the story.
That's what I've heard, and go right ahead. I'd love to learn more about it, but whatever it is.
People also believe that they can predict black swan events.
Yeah. Nobody has been able to
do then that. Makes it not a black swan.
Exactly.
You
exactly.
idiot.
Yeah, exactly.